All right, happy Monday. Welcome to our first ever Matchup Monday. In this one, we thought it would be very appropriate to throw out the question. In today's day and time, in today's market, who should someone be working for? A startup or a big company? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it's a very general kind of question because there's a million factors that play in what kind of company it is, what they're doing, what they're working on.
You want me to preface it a little bit by just saying all else being equal, kind of professional challenges, impact you could make. A lot of times people debate,
I don't think you can say those things are ever equal though. They're like part of the crucial part of working for a startup, right? Like you're gonna tell me like all things equal. Well, no. Like one of the arguments we were talking about earlier is there's two sides of this coin. There's you can either impact hundreds of millions of people and only have a small impact on part of your company's product, or you can go to work for a startup, which most likely in 99.9% of cases won't have the reach of a Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, but you'll be able to impact the entire company's product. You can't say all things equal. A lot of it may be individual basis, and every individual might care about a different thing, but working for a startup and working for a big company they're vastly different things. Nobody works for Microsoft that touches SQL Server, Windows, internet search, MSN, and all the properties. There are people who work at some smaller companies. We'll throw a little shout out to one of our clients, use like a Yapta, 14 people, 6 people in the engineering team. Yeah, I'm gonna PR for it here. I'm okay with that. But an engineer on their team of 6 people is gonna get really good exposure to the entire company's tech stack. But they're not, facing the number of people that a Google, Microsoft, Yahoo is. So you can't say all things equal.
I think for me, like the biggest arguments that has been and the biggest pitch that can is kind of like the risk versus the reward. I mean, essentially, when you go to a big company, there used to be a lot less risk associated with it, but a lot less risk, but much less possibility of reward. That's why you join a startup, you join early stage, you get that chunk of equity. If the company pans out, you make a ton of money off it. But 99.9% of startups fail. They don't end up going anywhere. But 90%. Just 90%.
Probably even higher than that, but it depends on what your definition of anywhere is. I'm a big proponent of the end result is a nice little bonus, it's a nice little cherry on top, but I think anyone that, is a serial, startupist or whatnot, loves the journey. I think they love the, 5 guys in a room with an empty whiteboard trying to figure out a way to take down Google. I think that's the killer aspect of working for a startup. Salaries are near level. You can make a little bit more kind of cash immediately.
You probably make more at a bigger company.
Bit. Maybe a little bit. Fine. Maybe a lot more if you count, benefits and all that stuff. But then you're right. The risk reward factor is a huge thing. I want to throw out just one aspect of it. A lot of people right now care about security. They're like, where am I safer? I'm going to throw out just a big argument, same argument I throw out all the time. At a big company, most people traditionally feel a lot more secure. But then really when you think about who's actually making the decisions that influence your employment, what kind of influence do you have on that person? If you have executives at the top trying to determine who at the bottom is cut or not cut, what kind of influence do you have? So what kind of control do you really have over your career? Whereas at a startup, you likely know the CEO, you likely know the people, you're likely in the room of the people that are making the decisions. So there's very clear influence over your career there.
There's also a lot to be said for, we talk about stability today. I mean, a lot of the problems that Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, the bigger companies of the world are facing today is the fact that consumers aren't spending. Tell me where you're more stable. A company right now that's totally at the whim of the consumer and the stock market, a la the big companies, or a company that's setting on a recently drafted venture round that's got them in cash for 3 years. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say in 3 years we're going to be out of this whole economic mess, or at least well on our way. Sure. In those 3 years, I'd much rather be in a position where I'm not concerned about my company needing to necessarily cater directly to the whims of the consumer, where we can focus on building a great product because we've got the venture funding in the bank and nobody really expects us to be driving a ton of revenue. Yeah, we need to be starting to work towards that goal. Venture capital in the bank versus a big startup that that really is relying on being able to sell their product. I'm feeling today a little bit more stable at a company that has just picked up the venture round in the last year.
All I got to say is this, that over the past couple of years, VC companies have been like ATMs handing out money in ridiculous amounts to so many people and so many companies. So yeah, they're right. They do have money and they're sitting on it for a number of years. So I mean, today they're stable, but I mean, if this does continue for a couple of years, all these companies' money is going to be running out. I mean, I don't see a lot of companies picking up B rounds and now C rounds. It's a lot of it like initial, either angel or A-Rons that they picked up that are getting them through this mess. And
look, 3 years from now, if companies can't raise venture funding, we're in a whole other heap of trouble that
Yeah.
this conversation doesn't even get to.
Yeah.
We're going to be in a position where, I mean, companies like, the big companies are going to be failing because they're not driving cash. So if 3 years from now we're still in that boat, or even 2 years from now we're still in this bad of a boat, there's going to be a whole other set of issues to deal with that's not going to protect anybody to startup or going to protect anybody to big company. Even the big companies' cash reserves are going to run out.
One other small point I want to make, we're running way over time. Obviously, this is a way bigger debate than what 3 minutes can contain, and hopefully it'll just spill over onto the blog and continue. One other point I want to bring up, during the last .com boom, there were a ton of hot startups that were popping, that were getting a ton of money, that eventually went away. And I think you notice it on someone's resume when you have, a 5 years, stint at an IBM, which was, a notable player back in the day.
Right.
And then they have real quick, 1 year at 5 different startups that no longer exist right now.
Right.
And now they're at Amazon, so.
Yeah.
Who knows? The hot startup of today may not necessarily be around tomorrow or in 5 years when you're trying
Right.
to, kind of make sense of your background.
Definitely.
So, all in all, a lot of food for thought over who makes more sense to work for, big company or startup. Big debate out there, I think. A lot of people are, care and are thinking about this sort of decision. What do you guys think?